Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon from whichever part of the world you are listening from and you are watching from. So, today we are here at Global Book Publishing Podcast. We have author Joseph Cassis. He is the fourth time children's book author, and he has written an amazing series, Squire with Fire. And you are going to learn more about him. He has done great things, and today we have Joseph with us, and we have Luca, who is a very important character of Squire with Fire, Disappearance of Luca. So we are going to have a great chit chat together. So I would love to introduce Joseph. Joseph, please welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Samada. And Luca says hello too. He's shy. He's still very shy and I try to get him out more often.
So can you say a few words about yourself, Joseph, and tell us more about your journey? How did you decide to become an author, and a little bit about your book?
Okay, wonderful. Well, it first started with a promise I made to my daughter when she was about 3 years old. She loved dragons and knights, and we were at the Disney World and sitting on the Cinderella castle steps. And she was so enthralled by dragons and knights, and I promised her that I would write her a book. And well, I did tell her stories throughout her childhood, but unfortunately, 30 years went by and I never fulfilled that promise. And then she got married and told me that she was having a little daughter, a baby girl. And I immediately said, oh my gosh, I never fulfilled that promise. So I sat down one weekend, wrote the story, and then researched on how I could possibly get it made before Isla, her daughter, would be born. But I didn't realize how difficult that would be. First of all, I needed an illustrator, and I couldn't find one that I could afford because it would cost over $5,000. So I self-taught myself how to use a digital board. And in doing so, that took a lot of time because I had about 24 illustrations. And the first ones were not that great, but I then pursued the ability to have those illustrations published. So I found a publishing company, and it went very well. And it was based on my first book. There's my daughter and me about 30 years ago. And it was such an amazing feeling to hand her that book. And she actually remembered who and what transpired 30 years ago. And tears came down. And it was a labor of love. I did it for her and her daughter as a legacy, to leave a legacy. And because it was so well received, it inspired me to go and write another book. So I wanted to change it up a bit, and I decided to seek out more professional help. Somebody who really knew the industry and could lead me and be my mentor. And that's where I came to Global Book Publishing. And it has been an incredible experience, much more exciting. I learned so much in doing it. And now the third of the series, which features Luca, baby Luca, who's a white dragon. And the book was published a couple of weeks ago, and we're so thrilled.
I know you have done it many times so far. This is your fourth book, right? So I'm sure our listeners, our viewers, authors, aspiring authors, writers, they want to know that what would be your advice, all the aspiring authors, as you have done it successfully, not once, not twice, but 4 times so far?
Well, that's a very good question, Samada, because sometimes when you're writing, you might stumble, but the whole idea is to pursue your passion with tenacity. An author, an aspiring author, will have doubts in themselves, their capabilities, even their story, and they'll receive so much criticism, whether it's positive or negative. You have to be able to filter through that. And that's where a good mentor helps guide a person on that journey. And I didn't have that initially, and I was very scared and didn't know if I was pursuing it. But my background in marketing and some of the other experiences I've had, I understood the creativity aspect, but not the book industry. And each industry has their own terminology, certain protocols, certain understandings. And that's why I think an aspiring author needs to find a great team so they can do it together. You can't do this by yourself.
I totally agree. It's like do what you are good at, and rest of the things leave it to people who are expert at. Book publishing is the one field where you cannot be a lone wolf if you have to make a success out of it, because that's definitely true. And I completely agree with you there. And yes, Luke, I agree with you too.
Yeah.
So I know you have had many experiences throughout writing all the book and publishing all four books so far. And so, what is the most important lesson, Joseph, that you have learned as an author?
Well, I touched upon it earlier, and that is to truly have a mentor. Um, I went alone, like you said, and I believed what people were telling me. And a lot of times it was only to benefit them and not me and my dream. So if you have someone who really cares and does it from a partnership, and I think you've emphasized that, that attracted me to your organization, that we're going to do this together. And it wasn't like you pay me this or you do this and you'll get your book, or you have to buy 15,000 copies or something like that. This is your goal. This is your dream. You understood what my dream was, what I wanted to do, and you made it happen with the team and your guidance. And I think that is the biggest piece of advice I could give to a young writer. If I may use an analogy that I learned from Luca here, it's like a fire. In order to have a fire, you have to have a spark, oxygen, and fuel. So the author or writer has a spark. They have an idea, but they have to have the oxygen to breathe life into it. And that's where the team comes in. And in doing so, when the team comes in, you start breathing this concept and making it happen. You still have to have resources and the fuel to burn it and make it that story burn and go out there, like social media and the distribution channels and things that may be not even relative to that individual. So I think when you have that, then you have a burning fire and that aspiration becomes real.
Yes, absolutely. And that's very true. Once you understand the steps and the process and the whys of why you are doing, why you are taking this step, why it is important, and having a thorough discussion and knowing what is going to happen next and why it is going to happen next and not now, makes it lot more exciting. And that is where all these pictures of doing research, understanding from your people for whom you're writing, gives you that fire, that fuel for your fire. Of course, you need to have the fire within you to even burn, but that fuel is these elements that will open the gate of success for you. So I completely agree with you when you say that it is very important to have that fire. So I know your book is very interesting, engaging, and informative. But what I want you to tell me, or what I want to know really, is how did you make your book interesting and engaging while still being informative? I mean, these three are important, but how did you club it together? What is that super secret?
Well, I think some out of it comes down to something that is imperative for all writers, all authors, and that is doing research. People may have a great idea, but they have to really, first of all, verify their background of the characters, the environment that they're living in, because you're creating your own world. So what I enjoy, I became addicted to this because I learned, so I'm a lifelong learner, and that I think most of us have to do is continue to learn techniques to better your craft, to learn about what's happening using the social media, things of that nature. So what I did is I incorporated these tidbits of information with the characters so that they became more three-dimensional. They became more real, and people can relate to it because it was in their world, or they heard about it, or it was historic. For instance, like tomatoes. I didn't know that it was considered poison apples back in the 1700s. For 200 years, people didn't eat tomatoes. Did you know that? And yet, yeah, and most people don't even think about that. And I didn't know, why would tomatoes be considered poisonous? So I incorporate that into my story. And also it taught a little nugget about lead poisoning. The aristocrats would eat off of pewter plates, and the pewter plates had lead in them, and the tomatoes would absorb the lead, and they would die from eating these tomatoes. And so you have to avoid it, eating off of pewter plates. And in those days, it registered because of the characters were knights and fighting for kings and queens. And tomatoes made pizza. So we incorporated that as a fun aspect for the story. The other part was to make sure to hide a few quote unquote Easter eggs, so that if someone could figure it out, they would find out there's a little twist to it or a little nugget there that they didn't expect.
Now I know the secret. How did you make it so interesting? And I learned something new. I had no idea about this tomato thing, which was considered poison apple for 200 years. Oh my God, that's a great thing that I learned today, a very new thing. And of course, I am with you when you say that it is important to do the research and brainstorming to come up with what you want to put in your book and how you want to do it. It's very important. It's like even if we know, being a subject matter expert, even if we know what we want to convey, we need to know whether the way we are conveying it to our audience is really going to get resonated the way they want it. So how did, Joseph, the book actually helped you in your career and in your life? How did you becoming an author helped you?
Well, I think first of all, the incredible training that you offer to all the authors who are in the program, that is like an alignment, you can't align a car without some kind of tool or help. You just can't go and do it. So your training is similar. I mean, a person may have written a one or two, or in my case now it's 4 books, but you always can learn more. And when you have that opportunity to train and to continue, that will make my writing even better. And that's really the purpose of our lives. We want to attain something bigger, self-actualization. And in doing so, I think a person needs to realize that all authors are writers, but not all writers are authors. And you can't achieve that unless you know the industry and what can transpire, and you can't keep track of it all either. If you're going to write, you can't understand all the elements that it takes to get it out to the public. So that's what I'm hoping to do in the future. And as you said so beautifully, eloquently, and articulated it to the authors, you have to realize you have to be an authorpreneur, that you have to, just because you wrote a book and published it, you have to also consider the marketing aspects, the being able to do the presentations, being able to convey the messages that you incorporated in your book. And if you don't, you're not really going to achieve your personal goal or what you should be doing for the community or the society. So
Absolutely. It is very important to think big because, as you said, that every author is a writer, but every writer isn't an author. And having that mindset, it's all about having that success mindset with whatever product you create, whether it's a book or it's anything else. To market it, to have it marketed right is very important, and have that mindset of being an authorpreneur rather than just an author is very important. Can you please talk a little bit more about your book and where they can find it, and little bit more about yourself, so that, like, before we leave, whosoever wants to get in touch with you or your book, they can get in touch with it.
well, I'm proud to say you can find the book Disappearance of Luca, Squire with Fire, which is a play on fire, the passion, and Squire. And you can find Luca and his story on Amazon. So, or you can go to squirewithfire.com and find the links there, as well as my background, Luca's background, and the previous books that relate to the whole legacy of Squire with Fire.
Wonderful, wonderful. Last but not the least, Joseph, can you tell me how many awards those books have won? I really am intrigued to know. Your book
Well,
has so many awards at the back. There is so many emblems, and so
yes, we
this
featured those.
podcast would be incomplete without knowing the awards your books have won.
Well, each of the books have won at least 5, and we're hoping to submit our new book here in the next couple of days, in fact, because the deadline's coming up quick, and hopefully it will be honored as well. I don't want to take it for granted because you never know. The competition is extremely keen. But my first award that I received on the first book was Mom's Choice Award, and I was thrilled. It was a gold award. But then it's also won the Purple Dragonfly Award, the Family Choice Award, and the Reader's Favorite 5-Star Award. So, and likewise, the second book even went further and received the Story of Monsters approval, which is a different type of award from a commercial librarian school type of thing. And so this new one with Luca hopefully will be just as privileged to win something. We'll see, right? Who could resist this little guy, Even skinny legs and fat cheeks, about the giraffe, Zuri, who you see in the background. It won 8 awards so far. So
Wonderful,
yes,
wonderful.
I am very humbled to even know people enjoy it that much.
Absolutely. It's not just about when you do a book properly, once you have the right intentions and it in play, everything in place, the award winning becomes a byproduct. You are tend to win awards because you have done something right and you have touched life. A lot more definitely to come, but I'm sure our viewers and our listeners have enjoyed today's podcast, and all the details about where you can buy the book, the link to the book, the link to contact the author, everything will be given in the comments section of this podcast. And please go ahead and grab your copy. I'm sure you will enjoy it. And this book has been done with great deal of care and care for the readers, not just for the author or the story or the illustrations. We have implemented author Joseph and us. With that, thank you so much for watching us today, for listening to us today. And we will be back very soon with yet another episode of Global Book Publishing podcast series. And I hope you guys had great learning as well throughout today's episode.